Hey everyone, I'm Robert Bennett. I'm running for Congress in North Carolina District 2. Unaffiliated voters and Democratic Party voters alike can vote for me then. Again, I'm running in the Democratic Party primary on March 3rd, but I wanted to take this time as a chance to speak to Democrats directly. It is Sunday morning, October 19th. It has been a bit of a rough week for Democrats, to say the least. We've seen the North Carolina General Assembly announce that they're going to gerrymander a couple other districts in this state. We saw the No Kings protest yesterday. So there's obviously a lot going on right now. And I think it's time that Democrats have a real heart to heart and start asking themselves some real questions and start thinking a lot about their own identity. So, on that note, just to speak a bit more about who I am for those of you who are new, um, I've lived in Raleigh for the last 10 years now. I love this area. I love the Triangle. I love this state. This is my home. Um, I've been a Democrat my whole life. My granddad was a Democrat. He fought for civil rights in his own community back in the 60s, even despite the fact that he met a lot of resistance from some of the leaders within his own community and even to an extent his own party back then. Um, I've long learned that lesson of speaking up for the truth, even if some people disagree with you. Um, I'm obviously just I'm a white guy, but more importantly, I'm someone who really values objectivity, science, reason, and independence. And I care more about my country, frankly, than I do about any given party because I am here to make this country a better place. All right. My career background is in climate and clean energy policy, where I've worked on issues like community solar, EV charging, offshore wind, and many of the issues that are really important to people here in North Carolina, not just in my district, but across the state. I'm also a former lacrosse coach, and I really enjoyed, still enjoy even, you know, teaching the right values and life lessons to kids and students so that they can be successful in anything they do going forward on or off the field. Um, with that being said, just to give a bit more background about myself, I also have to be totally honest in that I feel like the Democratic Party has just, not just nationally, but in the state of North Carolina especially, has just completely betrayed not just me, but most voters in this state. And there's a couple of key reasons why that I want to highlight here. The first, and arguably one of the most important, is that they just do not have an answer to Donald Trump. All right. Again, I'm a liberal, I'm a Democrat. I don't like what Donald Trump is doing just as much as the other guy, but screaming and yelling all day does not solve problems in public policy. I know that from experience. And right now, the Democratic Party leaders, whether at the federal level, state level, or even many times at the local level, all they do is foster a us versus them mentality. All right. If you need a bit more clarification on what that means, I would suggest that you first start with a lot of their social media posts, many of which they post every single day. Basically, the us being the Democrats versus them, the Republicans, and Donald Trump in this instance. And again, I am not a conservative. I am not advocating for conservative policies in any sort of way. I do support the ability to find ways to be bipartisan. I will not shy away from that. But we cannot keep doing this us versus them, framing of our messages all the time because A, that doesn't really talk about solutions. B, that makes polarization worse. Polarization is arguably at its highest level since the Civil War. We obviously know how bad the Civil War was. So, polarization is not good, guys. And the party leaders in North Carolina continue to foster an us versus them mentality, both in person, on social media posts, and especially in much of their writing. And so, this is a very dangerous thing that can lead to consequences. Okay. It is scary to see some of the rhetoric and some of the comments that get fostered online or otherwise because of this us versus them mentality. Um, so that's my first thing I want to mention. The second point is that unaffiliated voters, the equivalent of independents, if you will, actually now outrank both major parties in the state of North Carolina. And in particular, they outrank Democratic voters in my own district, North Carolina District 2, which is basically within Wake County. Excuse me, for those unfamiliar. And so that number has actually been growing very steadily over the last year. So, again, if you're a Democrat listening to this and you hate Donald Trump, you have to reckon with the fact that despite everything Trump has done, the number of people leaving the Democratic Party across the state and in my own district has only grown over time. That is despite the fact that, you know, Roy Cooper jumped into the Senate race and raised a ton of money. Okay. Money is not winning over voters, guys. That is just the truth. You win over voters by giving them something to offer. That is just how it is. Um, and again, not only do unaffiliated voters outnumber Democrats, they outnumber us by a lot. All right. There's close to 30,000 more unaffiliateds in my own district than Democrats right now. I expect that number to grow between now and March, to be frank. And if you've worked in politics at all or public policy at all, 30,000 votes is a lot. For example, Joe Biden won the state of Georgia and flipped it blue for the first time in decades with only 10,000 votes in a place like Atlanta and a couple other counties nearby. So, even 10,000 votes, or even 1,000 votes for that matter, makes a tremendous difference. Meanwhile, we are losing Democratic voters, and unaffiliated now outnumber the Democrats. Um, that is just something we have to be honest about. Um, the other thing we really need to talk about is money in politics, okay? Because a lot of the Democrats in the state of North Carolina have been wrongfully making it out as if only Republicans take big money or dark money and that sort of thing. That is abundantly not true. Both major parties take significant amounts of money from PACs. They also use super PACs adjacent from them to help support their campaigns. Super PACs, if you're not familiar, are groups that were created after the 2008 Citizens United Supreme Court case, where basically these small groups that often are funded by, it could be anyone. It could be a rich donor, it could be a special interest group, it could be a corporation, it could literally be almost anyone can funnel money into these super PACs through independent expenditures to help influence elections, just so long as they do not donate directly to that candidate. And in 2024, these super PACs and dark money groups actually put up more money to Democrats to influence the 2024 election than Republicans. So dark money groups across the country donated about 1.2 billion during the 2024 race, as opposed to around 660 million to Republicans. Obviously, Republicans not only still won with less money, but you know, it's obviously well known that Democrats do not like billionaires like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and those sort of guys. I sure as hell don't like them, but we have to start being honest about the fact that the corrosive influence of the post Citizens United era and super PACs is still present within our own party and is most certainly still present in North Carolina. Um, I also just want to briefly touch on another way the Democratic Party is financially compromised. It is through a PAC group, and sometimes they have affiliated super PAC groups called APAC. This is a PAC that has donated to both sides of the aisle for the last few decades, and they also donated to Donald Trump's 2024 and 2020 election campaigns. They also have donated to key North Carolina Democratic Party candidates throughout the years. Just to give a few examples, they were the biggest contributor to Wiley Nichols' congressional race a couple years ago. And Wiley Nickel, just this past week, went on Reddit and started fanning the us versus them flames by talking about gerrymandering, not offering any solutions to it, and just saying that our response to it should be to get mad. Okay? Getting mad and having people be angry at each other all the time is exactly what a foreign national group would want to do. Okay? Our other enemies, like Russia, China, they want America to be destabilized. And right now, Israel and its Likud party are in power there and are obviously the main ones driving the war in Palestine. So we have to be honest about the fact that, you know, dark money interest groups like APAC have a corrosive influence on Democrats in North Carolina, and we have not had a real response to that as a party. And that is deeply troubling. That is deeply upsetting, especially when Wiley Nickel not only quit on his original congressional district once he got gerrymandered out, but he quit on the US Senate race as soon as Roy Cooper showed up. And now all of a sudden he wants to run for the Wake County District Attorney Office. Okay? Well, if justice is a key component of the District Attorney Office, then he doesn't care about just injustices going on around the world because he's been taking money from, or he previously took money from a group that is now supporting genocide, guys. That's within our own party. All right. And I'm not trying to, you know, shit on Democrats here, but these are facts that you can go look up yourself. You can look up more in some of my pieces of writing on Substack. You can learn more about it in my policy platform and things like that. And you can go fact check this stuff yourself, guys. APAC is not hiding. They are among us here in North Carolina and nationally. And we have to be honest about the corrosive influence that APAC has on our elections with regard to Democrats. Okay. So that is just another point I want to make. Another thing I want to say just about the whole us versus them mentality is that, again, as much as I don't like Donald Trump, he really is a insurgent of American politics. If you look at the overall number of votes he got in 2024, which is roughly 77 million out of the 340 million people in the country, that's only about 22% of the US population. That is a marathon distance away from the true majority of Americans. Now, if you're not familiar with politics, you may be wondering, how could you possibly win such an important race without even getting the majority of Americans? There's a couple main reasons for that. A, a lot of people just stayed home and did not vote. And there are several reasons why they could have done that, but just one key one I'll highlight here is that so many people across the country, and especially in North Carolina, have just felt disenfranchised by the political process. They do not feel like they have someone that represents them. Okay? And I do not blame them. I have empathy for those people. I understand their frustration. So I'm not here to criticize them. I'm here to say that we need to find new strategies to actually connect with those voters and start having conversations with them as opposed to just fanning the flames and shitting on Trump all day. Okay. And you also have to consider the fact now that across 30 states, and you can go read about this in some of my Substack posts, but in nearly 30 states that make voter registration data public, not only are people leaving the Democratic Party in mass still, but in close to 30 of those states, unaffiliateds actually outnumber Republicans, believe it or not. So, what that ironically means is that, on a positive note, there is actually a really big coalition that could be built between Democrats and unaffiliated voters, independent voters, if you will. But Democrats, especially in the state of North Carolina, have not been focused on that. Again, they are focused on protest. They are focused on getting mad. They are focused on just criticizing Republicans all day. That is not how you win over voters. That is not spreading a message. That is fanning the flames that helped get us into this mess in the first place. My strategy as a candidate for Congress is to build a diverse coalition between not just Democrats, but unaffiliated voters alike. Not just because they can vote for me under the rules here in North Carolina, but because there is an injustice where people who have been disenfranchised by the political system, the two-party system, frankly, have not had their voices heard. They don't have a candidate for them. And while I cannot please everyone, nor am I trying to, I do think it is worth having some serious conversations about why so many people feel disenfranchised and how to solve that. My main way to do that is twofold. It's proportional representation, which is something we need to authorize at the federal level. It's also increasing the number of overall House of Representatives members, um, which has essentially been capped since the 1920s. So, as the population has grown, the number of House reps has stayed the same for 100 years. That has to change, guys. We need more than 435 House members. I'll talk more about that in other videos. But anyway, if you're a Democrat listening to this video right now, particularly in the state of North Carolina, and even if you're one of the Democrats who doesn't like me, or you're maybe upset that I'm, in District 2 challenging a incumbent Democratic Party member in Congress, you have to ask yourself and your party leaders some serious questions given recent events. Just to go over what a few of those are. All right. Why did super PACs spend more money on Democrats in 2024 than Republicans? Where did that money go? And frankly, are Democrats in the state of North Carolina right now in 2025 benefiting from super PACs? I am quite frankly looking at you, Roy Cooper, or others across the state who are currently running. I have not looked at everyone's campaign finance, excuse me, campaign finance reports as of late, but I am genuinely curious to see is are groups like APAC or some of their subsidiaries still donating to their campaigns? Or are the super PACs, because they're technically independent of those campaigns, are they planning to spend money for Roy Cooper? Because we cannot be advocates for democracy if we, work with super PACs. I will not work with super PACs. I don't want any corporate money or APAC money. All right. That is not something I will do. But again, these are questions that need to be asked. What is the Democrats' plan in North Carolina to actually stop Trump? Again, getting mad, protesting, and encouraging more polarization. Not only is it wrong because it makes things worse, but it's not an actual plan. I have yet to see a real tangible strategy from Democratic Party leaders in this state to stop Trump. And I have, conversely, a close to 100-page policy platform with very specific actions to go change American politics as we know it. You can go find it on my website at robertfrenc.com. I will be talking about it plenty throughout the course of this campaign. All right. Other questions. What are the North Carolina Democratic Party leaders going to do to stop APAC and its corrosive influence on our elections? Again, they donate to Democrats in this state. We got to be honest about that. What is the Democratic Party strategy to win over independent voters? I've never seen a real statement on that. Why are so many voters now leaving the party and registering as unaffiliated? The party has frankly not really put out a real statement on that. Or at the very least, they just haven't said enough. And also, why is the Democratic Party lacking a set of diverse and younger candidates, not just at the federal level, but even across the state level? All right. We can't let politics be a good old boys club. That should not be how it is. And if we want to truly be advocates for diversity, we need more candidates that didn't just come from, some law school or even from a place like the General Assembly, quite frankly. And lastly, just kind of on the note of representation, especially with regard to groups like APAC, we know that there is a Jewish caucus within the Democratic Party. And again, I am not anti Semitic in any way, but I don't see how the Muslim community is being represented in the Democratic Party in the state of North Carolina. I genuinely don't know if there are conversations with that community. I don't know if the Muslim community, um, and frankly, the Middle Eastern community for that matter, has a voice in Democratic Party politics in this state. Um, Someone might be able to correct me there. Maybe there's something I don't know about, but I've looked on the party's website. I've looked at statements from Democratic Party leaders across the state. I do not see any representation of that community um, in the state of North Carolina. And theocracy is a real danger. And theocracy is what is leading the Israeli government right now and is ultimately leading to the genocide that is in the Gaza Strip right now. So these are serious issues that need to be addressed. And I'm not trying to make anyone feel down or things like that, but again, if the Democratic Party wants any shot of winning over voters and frankly surviving in the 21st century, these questions not only need to be asked, but they need to be answered. All right. So, again, if you're a Democrat listening to this, again, I am a Democrat. I plan to stay as a Democrat, but my allegiance is first to the country, it's to objectivity, reason, science, and all those sort of things. And when I start looking at what's going on to the party through that lens, I feel completely betrayed. I really, really do. And it really riles me up just thinking about it. And I think it's time for us to start having honest conversations about the party's mistakes because if we don't, we are on a very dangerous track right now. So, if you're a Democrat listening to this, I would love your support on March 3rd. If you're a Democrat who is maybe a little skeptical of my campaign, please take your time to get to know me. I have plenty of more YouTube videos coming up here. You can go look at my policy platform and things of that nature. So take your time. But, Democrats, I am pleading with you. You need to start asking questions of your party leaders because right now they do not have answers. That is a very dangerous situation.